Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. The topic we're going to be discussing is illegal immigration and the border crisis in the United States. Now, what we see in the first slide is just as important, even if it looks like a title. This is how people are living. This is the situation that we're dealing with, and we need to address that. That's why I first bring up the two arguments being made about illegal immigration in the United States. On the left, we have two children sitting behind a fence at a table. In front of them is barbed wire. This is the image that a lot of the liberal side of American politics rather, has presented, right? They're showing the emotional aspects of what we're talking about, and that's a real important thing to address, right? They are real people, there are real children being detained in encampments at the border for trying to cross illegally with their parents. These are people who don't actually have any choice. Their parents had them do it. They also don't have the ability to fend for themselves in situations where they're not given enough care, support, and resources. So it is a very real crisis happening at our border with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of migrants trapped in these encampments, stuck in a state of limbo, not being able to enter the United States and not being able to go home. And then we have the second part of this slide. On the right, we see the immigration statistics that are being presented on the right, or a lot of the times on the right, as evidence of too much illegal immigration into the country. This statistic shows that in 2018, there are 11,390,000 people living in the United States who came here illegally. This is also important because there are a lot of factors that this is negatively affecting, right? And that could be job security for low income workers in the United States, housing crisis that goes up with the more people we introduce, unsustainable, unsustainable small town living. When you have, hundreds and hundreds of people cross the border illegally into small towns, it really disrupts the ecosystem of how people are living there, the job market, everything like that. And so it's a real fear that people have. A lot of the times, people don't associate these two aspects with the same crisis. They take it as a humanitarian crisis on one hand and an economic crisis on the other, but they're not. They both stem from the same thing, which is immigration. And this presentation is going to point out the fact that both of these things can be solved for. They don't need to be as divisive and as arbitrary as we've made them in this country. And what made them so divisive and arbitrary is our past failures as a society to try to fix them. So these failures, the two biggest ones, are the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act, which was a bipartisan bill that said that whoever was living in the country at the moment would have amnesty and gain citizenship as long as they'd been here for a certain amount of years, and there's other factors. But there's a lot. There's millions of people who got amnesty through this. And then the other aspect of that was they were going to heighten border security, and that's how we got it through bipartisanly, right? So that's what people thought of as bipartisan back then, is trying to stop it at its face, but also just kind of accepting the fact we couldn't fight against the rest of them. And then we have the 2018 zero tolerance policy, which was Donald Trump's attempt to control the border through a forceful act instead of trying to appease the Democrats or the left. He decided to go all in on just rejecting the idea of illegal immigration and only playing to his base. And that's where you get the border wall, which is what we see in this picture on the left. And we see how ineffective it is. And we see how ineffective all of these are, right? In 1986, they said this is going to be the thing to stop illegal immigration and fix the problems at the border. And it didn't, clearly. I mean, if we look back at the last slide, we can see the numbers, right? 2015 to 2018, the statistics go up, not down, and they're well up from the 1980s. And the same thing with 2018 zero tolerance policy. It didn't and wasn't effective. The reason we have a humanitarian crisis is because people are still coming to the border in mass, and we can't handle that volume. And the border wall is a joke. It costs billions and billions of dollars. And as you can see on the left, people can go right over it, under it, around it. It's just not an actual method of prevention. And that is the main thing I'm addressing in this, is that the ways you fight against illegal immigration, both to prevent humanitarian crisis and to have less people immigrating to the country illegally, is through fighting the root causes of immigration, which is poverty, violence, and oppression. In this image, we see a woman, this woman is living in Venezuela, with her child sitting in literal garbage. I mean, this is not a life people want to live. And that's why Venezuela has, in the last couple of years, as their economy has gone down, had more and more migrants, illegal migrants, into the United States. So if we can address these three main aspects of immigration, why people move away from where they're living, they take these massive risks of possible incarceration or death in the desert trying to cross into the United States. Why do they do that? And that's poverty, violence, and oppression. And no matter how many walls you put up to the United States, how many border agents are there, it is always going to be better for them to attempt to do that than living in the conditions they are at home. And that is why this is so important. The reason they have those factors is because bad actors are perpetuating worsening situations in these home nations, right? In this image, we see a picture of a Venezuelan protest where they are saying that Putin and Maduro are the same person. And that's because in this country, Maduro eliminated U.S. funding to the heightening of oil pipelines and the foreign loans into the country through private companies into the economy of Venezuela. And then he accepted Putin's help later on after he had already centralized it, but it didn't do anything because Putin and Maduro are siphoning away money from the public into their private accounts, and that is the problem. And this is not just the situation in Venezuela. This is happening all over Central and South America, where we see dictators or gangs siphoning off public funds that were supposed to be allocated to increasing the economy into their private accounts. Now, my solution to this is the federal government of the United States needs to stop looking for band-aid solutions, like putting up a wall or asking people not to come or threatening, to incarcerate their children. It just doesn't work. What could work is resolving the economic and social issues in home nations by providing loans that come with a stipulation of government oversight and accounting checks to these nations that are asking for our loans, right? So Venezuela in particular needs money to redevelop their oil and gas pipelines. They are theoretically the richest nation in the world with natural resources. They have the most oil and natural gas of any country on the planet. So they should be rich, but they are in an extreme economic crisis because they have no sources of loans that could actually finance the development of refineries and oil pipeline drilling. And while environmentally that sounds dubious, right? And there's lots of problems with people say with corruption, but if you implement these loans in smart ways with the backing of a strong federal government in the United States, there is real hope that you could find solutions to a lot of the problems we're seeking. If we can eliminate the economic crisis, which would eliminate the violence that stems from gangs, which people join because they're poor, and you can eliminate some of the social oppression that comes with that when people have to work every day or people are kept impoverished and uneducated, you have a lot more social reform. All of these problems can be solved through economic loans from the United States and making sure we do checkups to make sure these loans are not used for corruption. And then these are just the sources I've used for this presentation. I thank you all for watching and listening to this presentation, and I hope you all have a great day.